Good morning. This is the video for the four main guards in the KDF Ringeck and the four breakers. This is stuff we've all seen before, but in this section of the gloss they're being kind of put together in a new mental map and application, so I think it's worth going through, although it's not really a Pell exercise. I am about 4 days out of minor knee surgery, so I'll be moving a little slower today, but I think that this should be pretty easy. So what I'll do is I'll read the description of the four main guards, show you how I teach them and practice them, then I'll read the description of the cuts that are used to break the guard specifically, and I'll show you how I practice those. So here's the Zettel, the poem. 4 positions alone, hold from them and flee the common. Ox, plow, fool, from the day are not unknown to you. And so the explanation, this is what you shall otherwise hold from no position, then only the 4 which will be named here. The first guard is called the ox. Assume it like this. Stand with the left foot forward and hold your sword next to your right side with the cross guard in front of your head, and let the point hang against the face as pictured near. The second guard is called the plow. Assume it like this. Stand with the left foot forward and hold your sword with crossed hands next to your right knee, right side over the knee, so that the point is against the face as is pictured hereafter. The Danzig talks more about the pommel being by the hip. The third guard is called the fool. Assume it like this. Stand with your right foot forward and hold your sword with outstretched arms in front of you with the point on the ground as is pictured hereafter. The fourth guard is called from the day. Assume it like this. Stand with the left foot forward and hold your sword at your right shoulder as is pictured hereafter, or hold it with outstretched arms over your head. So we have these 4 primary guards, and I'm going to change the order a little bit because I think it's easier to flow between them. So the first guard, this Vom Tag, is from the day. When I teach this version of the guard, the by the shoulder, what I tell people is to answer the telephone. Right? So this is our high cutting guard. You'll see it a little bit more retracted. You'll see it higher up, and of course Meyer has it directly over the head, but we're just going to answer the telephone. If I stick out my thumb, roll my 2 forearms together, I'm now in my right ox. The cues that I give people are being able to see the underside of their quillion and under their sword. And when people do this, when they can't see behind their quillion or it's too low, it's not really blocking things very well. So we want to have a little bit of that cushion. And then, although only the right side is described, there is a left ox. So what I tell people to do is to step forward and roll through a thrust with their thumb on top, and then roll the thumb under on the other side, still being able to see the underside of the quillion and under my sword, and now I'm in my left ox. And then if I bring my pommel to my hip bone with my point still high, because this is still here, now I'm in my left plow. If I step forward and thrust my thumb on top and then bring it to the right hip, now I'm in the right plow. And then if I step forward and drop my point, now I'm in Albert, the full guard. And then we can actually step forward and re-answer the telephone, and now we're back in our original guard. So this is actually the first sword-based thing that I teach people in the club in terms of, we kind of call it their first sword kata. It gets them moving with the sword, and when I start referencing the positions, it kind of embeds it in their mind. So just remember, we've got the high cutting guard where we answer the telephone, stick out the thumb, bring the forearms together, sing the underside and below, thrust, roll to the other side, sing the underside and below, to the hip, point still high, to the other hip, point still high, dropping the point, and then we can stand back up and answer the telephone. So you've got your 4 primary guards, and they all do different things, and that's been gone over in other videos. And then right after the guards, we're being introduced to the master cuts that break the guards. And we've seen these before, but now we're being asked to think about them and apply them in a new way. So let me read that to you. So we've had the Zettel. 4 are attacks which also greatly injure the positions. Beware of parries. If it happens, it hurts you more. We'll get to that in a second. If you have previously heard that you shall fence from 4 positions alone, so you shall also know how the 4 attacks which counter the same 4 positions, and the 4 attacks, they are 4 hews. The first hew is the crooked hew. It counters the guard which is called the ox. The second is the lateral or thwart hew. It counters the guard from the day. The third is the squinter. It counters the guard of the plow. The fourth is the parter. It counters the guard which is called the fool. So let's look at why these cuts do this, and then this will actually practice on the Pell. So if we look at the high cutting guard, whatever version it is, if I'm facing my Pell and they have a high cutting guard and I thrust them, for example, I haven't done anything to stop myself getting cracked in the head. If I come in with just a normal overhow, I haven't done anything necessarily to stop that. So I need a way to attack safely, which is either going to hit them or at least provoke a response out of them that's going to keep me safe. And so the thwart cut does this really well. And as a reminder, the thwart cut is that back edge with the slight offline. So if I'm attacking my Pell, I'm going to be attacking my high line target, and I can go slightly off the line. You don't have to, but I think it's helpful. We're throwing this high back edge, because if my opponent, who's been in this high cutting guard, spazzes and throws an attack at me, or they just try to crush down on my sword to stop it, I'm covered under my sword. So this thwart cut attacks this side, or maybe attacks this elbow if they're overhead, but it does it in a way that if somebody goes, oh shit, you are covered. So that's why it breaks that particular position. Breaking might mean hitting the person, but at the very least, it's going to provoke them out of that position safely. So we break the high cutting guard with that thwart cue. Okay. If we want to break ox, we have the crooked cut, the crump out. And we've seen this before. This is that kind of crossed-armed. And the books don't go into this so much, but what I have noticed, and so what I teach in the club, is that if somebody is in a high thrusting guard, we want to go to their outside. If we come this way towards the inside of the weapon, it's very easy for them to track. So if we go to the out, it's much harder for them to track out. So what I have found is that if someone is in the left ox, they are on their left side, then we're going to step to the outside and throw a true edge crump to their hands or onto their blade and do some of the control stuff that we've seen in other videos. If they are in the right ox, what I actually like to do is step out to my left and throw a back edge crooked cut. So the way I would practice this on the Pell is just making sure that I can, from whatever position I want, we can be in a barrier guard if we want to make it easy. And we're going to throw a true edge crump stepping to our right, and then a false edge crump stepping to our left. Just make sure when you're practicing this in drilling and sparring, you are stepping to the outside of their point rather than to the inside, because again, it's very easy for them to track. So the crump, the crooked cut, breaks that high point forward guard, the ox. If someone is in a low point forward guard, the plow, we've seen this. This is the squinter, where we're getting that descending back edge cut to get control, and then we can step in and thrust. So we've talked about how we practice that on the Pell as well. Position, and then step for that thrust. And it works just as well against an extended point rather than just the low point. And then finally we have the full guard. Again, it looks very open, but there's some really dangerous rising stuff we have to be aware of. So that scalp cut or that parter we were looking at that really maximizes our range with those high hands, that's how we're going to either hit them or provoke them out of that guard, and then we've talked about some of those options. So we have seen these things before, but now we're gonna kind of given a position and counter organization in the fight book itself. So play with those. I know this one's a little bit more conceptual, a little bit less kind of Pell work drilly, but that's gonna happen a little bit as we get a little further along into the material. Hopefully this was helpful, and like I said, if you're working your way through the Ringeck material for the first time, I think that this is a really important section to be aware of. I'm gonna pause this and make a whole other video because we actually get to go to Crown next weekend, and so I'm gonna do 2 videos at one time. So you'll get 2 videos of me being slow with money.